Hi, it's Millie here. Welcome to What Google Sheets Can Do series, where I will show how advanced data tasks can be achieved easily in Google Sheets. Have you ever wanted to automatically get data from a web page straight into your Google Sheets? Like Bitcoin prices, sports scores, shopping items, a long list, and so on? In this video, I'll show you how to do that and how to periodically take a snapshot of that data so you can do a time series analysis later. Let's do a demo where we start from scratch, and I'll show you how easy it is to achieve data scraping from Google Sheets. We can create a new Google Sheet with the shortcut sheets.new, and let's name this data scraping. The Google Sheets function which enables this is importHTML. It allows you to import data from table or list in an HTML page. And if you expand the help, you'll see the format that they expect. First, you need to supply the URL, then the query. So query is simply either table or list in a string. And index is it the first table or the second or the third table in that page? And locale is to indicate what language it should be looking for. That's great. But how do you check what's within the table and list HTML tags, you might ask? Well, there are two ways to do this. You could go to View, Developer, View Source, and check whether the data you want is in a table or list by searching for the strings, open tag, table, or you can search for open tag, li, close tag. Okay, notice the table search text has no closing HTML tag because it's common for tables to have other config details before the tag is closed. I'll show you what I mean exactly during the demo later on an actual page. Also notice for list, I search for li instead of ol for ordered list or ul for unordered list, which is bullet point. And that's because those are short strings with potentially a lot of matches. Okay, so this is the first way to view the source code. Another way to highlight the data you're interested in is to either do a right mouse click or on your keyboard, do Control and click, then select Inspect. You can see the highlighted region will have a corresponding highlighted source code. And from that, you can see this is a link which sits under a nav, under a section, under a div, and so on, but not inside a table. So that's another way of checking the source code. Let's say we're getting our score from this page. And what we are interested is using the highlight approach and inspect. Okay, you can see TH, that's table header. So that's already an indication this is sitting inside a table. TR for table row. And indeed, it's sitting inside a table. And this is what I was talking about, why I search for a table without a closing tag. You usually would have other configuration, like the class name, like the style, like the padding, and so on. So since the data we want is sitting inside a table, we can get started. We first copy this URL in a double quote, and the query is, again, double quote, table. Now, index. We need to find the index of this table with respect to all the tables in the page. With that, you either have to search a little bit or try and error. What I'll do is use source, find table. As you can see, there are two of them. So it looks like our table is the second table. Then put 2 as the index, do the default en_us, locale, and enter. If this is the first time you're doing this, it will require authorization. So you can click on allow access here, or allow access there. Here you go. The data from this page has been imported into your Google Sheet. So this is for our sports score. Let's now do one Bitcoin example. For Bitcoin, let's go to Yahoo Finance. I just want this little bit of data. For this example, we can go to view source directly. And again, we do start tag table, search string. Okay, so this is the table previous close. And you can see this is the first of two. So that already gives us the index. And insert the URL. The query is table. Index is 1. Locale is EN US. And that's your data. Okay, that's what we want. All right, but this is a dynamically generated data. So as you can see, the data is already changing here. And this, I am assuming, would be something that changes every day. So how do we make sure the data in our Google Sheet is also changing accordingly? Well, for that, you need to go to File, Settings, and you can specify for your calculation how often you want to recalculate. Here, we can say on change in every minute, or on change in every hour. We can select on change in every hour and save settings. And it's important to know that whatever frequency you set there will be applied to the whole file. So if you have data ranges that are being updated at different frequency, you will want to split them into separate files. All right, now for the third example, I want to show you what you would do for list examples. For our list example, let's go to this page. We can see bullet points here, which indicate it may be an unordered list. So let's have a look. Okay, so remember earlier on I would search for LI. That's an easy way to know whether you have a list item. And this one is enclosed inside UL, so unordered list as we suspected. Okay, let's view the source. Unordered list. Next one, the third one. Fourth one. This one. That looks about right. So I think we found what we wanted. We do import HTML and the URL. This time for query, we'll put list. And for index, we can try 5. And locale is EN_US. Oh, well, 1 off. Let's go to the next one, 6. That's much better. That's what we wanted. But now let's do multiple of them. So I'm moving this down a bit so I can give it a header. You can see this is one single list and there's another list. So we can definitely go back and create another list next to it. And you simply copy this over. Instead of 6, you increment to 7. So the next one is the 7th list. And we adjust the width. There you go. If you have a web page with a long list, this is what you can do to import that whole list in without having to type them out or do a weird copy and paste. Because what can happen is if you do a copy and paste from here, sometimes you can have a weird formatting issue like this. And it becomes a bit more tedious to clean it up. All right. If all you want to know is how to import table and list content into your Google Sheet, you've got it. Please be cautious that every time you are retrieving the data, you're actually accessing the corresponding web pages. So that will generate traffic. So please be mindful of how much traffic you're generating, because we don't want to keep hitting certain web pages to the extent that it makes them unable to serve other people who may need to access that web page. Now, if you want to look at how we may want to take a snapshot of the content at regular intervals, then watch on. So to take snapshot for a dynamic page like a Bitcoin page where the update is in place, meaning in the place of previous value, it will just update itself. Then the import HTML will retrieve the data because we're simply pointing to the URL and the first table, which is going to be in the same location. So if this changes to a different value, it will also retrieve the same value, overriding its old value. So what we really want to do is have a log to take snapshot at regular intervals. We might want to take all this information and put it in the log. We will use AppScript to help us take that snapshot. So we go to extension, AppScript. Okay, let's call the function add record, and let's call this project logging. Now we want to first get input data. We get the current spreadsheet, which is the one we're working on, and the source will be our sheet called Bitcoin, which you can see here, Bitcoin. That's where we will be getting our data from. And then we want to get range B1 to B4. Notice it's single quote here, B1 to B4. And then we want to get the values. Now let's define where we want to write the data to. We are writing to the sheet called log. So instead of Bitcoin, we change that to log. And then we want to append the value so that we have historical value without overwriting any of the old values. So what we need to do is we need to find the first empty row. How we get that is we go to the destination sheet and we say get last row. But we don't want to overwrite the last row. We want to get last row plus 1. Sometimes it's a good idea to have a logger to see what you're getting and verify that before we move on. Then we can run. Just gets the input data, defines the destination, and shows the input data in a logger. And because we're running this for the first time, we need to authorize. Okay, so you can see in our log, we have these values and they correspond to B1 to B4. But what you need to notice is it's a 2-dimensional array because of the 2 square bracket. So that means it's taking the first row, second row, third, and fourth. So there are 4 rows altogether. Now, with the date, I have chosen not to use the start date, but instead use the date the script is run. So let's get the current date. And let's clear an array to hold the result. And let's put the date in as the first value. This is saying we'll have a 2-dimensional array, and the first row will just have date. If we have a second row, then we'll have this kind of format, but we only want 1 row. And if you don't need to do any formatting, you can simply put this and just copy the values over and be done with it. But we can't do that for 2 reasons. First of all, we need to transpose from a column to a row. Secondly, you'll notice from the heading here, I'm getting them in reverse order. So we need to write a loop. You will see we have a for loop here. This loop is to go through the rows in our origin value, B1 to B4. Notice how I'm getting the length of the origin value, looping through and adding them into the first row, which currently only has date, and adding the new values as columns into that row. If you have a two-dimensional array, it would look like that. And we want to transpose. So that's the format we want in our result array, starting with the date. And then we want to append the content of row 1, row 2, and row 3 in the same row. So every day we can append one additional row to the bottom of our log sheet. That's the purpose of the transpose. This row +1 here is because we already have date as the first element. So we want to offset by 1. And if all you want to do is transpose, you could simply have that. But more than transpose, we also want to reverse the order. That's why you'll see the calculation of the total length minus row minus 1. And I'll explain why. B1 to B4 means we have 4 rows. So the length of origin value is 4. 4 minus row. So remember, because this is in a for loop, index will start with 0 as we have specified here. And then minus 1 is because row 1 is index 0. Row 2 is index 1. Row 3 is index 2. And row 4 will be index 3. So there is no index 4. That's why there is a -1 to compensate for the difference between counting the number of items and working with index. So you'll notice when we have a for loop, we are working with index, so it starts with 0. Whereas if we are counting, or if we are working with the cell number, like in this example, get range, we start off with position 1. So this is to ensure we have them in reverse order. And at the end of it, we assign that to the destination sheet in the first empty row, first column, and then we specify the number of rows and the number of columns, passing this array in, which would be 4 plus 1. And this +1 is to make sure our date is also there. We need to make sure the dimension is specified correctly there. All right, let's remove this non-code. We can run and check that the results are appended correctly in your log sheet. Then we can add a trigger to run that method. So you come to this trigger item on the left-hand side menu, and then click add trigger at the bottom right-hand side. We want the function add record to run. You can leave the deployment to head. And we want to have the trigger be time-driven. And you can specify how frequent you want the trigger to run. So I'll select day timer, so it runs once a day. And which time of the day? I'll keep it as midnight to 1 a.m. Then, what if it fails? I want it to notify me daily, once a day, so that it won't bombard my email with failure messages. And save. Okay, so that's our trigger. That's it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and comment with feedback or question. Thank you.